Now,
on News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
O'Connor and Company.
It is 7:06 now. O'Connor and Company here, chugging along this Tuesday morning in the nation's capital. Coming up at 8:05, we're going to speak with Ron Charles. Now, he's a book reporter for the Washington Post, and he's very concerned about all that book banning going on. Sorry, are books banned right now?
No.
There are no books banned, are there? All right. Well, I'm sure he'll clear it up for us. That's coming up at 8:05. I'm Larry O'Connor. That very vocal, mouthy blonde over there is Julie Gunlock. And joining us
to my husband.
Joining us right now, I have, is Jenin Younes. Now, Jenin is with the litigation. She's litigation counsel for the New Civil Liberties Alliance, and you guys had a huge victory here. But let's sort of lay there. First of all, congratulations on the victory and getting California to rescind this law. Gavin Newsom himself just repealed the law. But let's lay out what this law stated, because it is terrifying that the government in California thought they could get away with this until they met up with you in court, Jenin.
Yeah, well, they so sorry, did you ask what the law said? I didn't get that part.
Yes, please.
Okay. Yeah. So the law prohibited doctors or punished doctors for disseminating to patients false information that misinformation, which is defined as false information that contrary to the contemporary scientific consensus and contradicted by the standard of care or something. The phrase is kind of convoluted. Mm-hmm. So two different standards, neither of standard of care is one that doctors are accustomed to abide by, but contemporary scientific consensus is not. So the whole point of the law, in my opinion, was to scare doctors into, not saying anything that departs from state orthodoxy on COVID-19. This was all about COVID-19, by the way. And it was the law's main proponents were people who really didn't want any dissent from CDC in the state on vaccines, masks, that kind of thing. That's clear from the legislative history. So the purpose of the law was essentially to shut doctors up.
Of course, in the 18th century, the scientific consensus was that leeching was probably the best way to cure somebody from a viral infection or what have you. I mean, scientific consensus changes on an ongoing basis, and it takes maverick doctors to actually step out from the crowd, from the herd, and say, you know what, there's another way to look at this. Maybe we should try a different treatment. The history of the medical profession is replete with that. The last thing we need is some mind-numbed numbskull in a California state legislature to dictate what a doctor can tell their patient.
Right, exactly. And that was actually a point we made. And I mean, we've all seen the consensus change in real time with COVID again and again. First the vaccine stopped transmission, then they didn't. Masks didn't work, then they did. Then yeah. So the idea that you're going to punish doctors for saying things that are against, state orthodoxy on COVID is really kind of shocking. And our doctors talked about that. One of them gave an example. He had been against intubating patients from the beginning of the pandemic, and that was based on his long experience. He's a Stanford ER doctor, his long experience with this kind of thing. He had resisted it. And his patients did better, when they were intubating people in New York and all other parts of the country for the most part, and seeing much higher death rates. It was because he and others like him were not doing that. They were able to say, wait a second, this is actually a bad idea. People are doing better when they're not intubated for the most part. Yeah. And that's how we make progress in science. So the idea that you're going to, cripple doctors by making them scared to do anything that's not what the CDC says at the moment is terrifying.
Well, this law was signed by Gavin Newsom on September 2022. We knew a lot by then. We knew sort of that the sort of prevailing wisdom on COVID was wrong. And so it's just amazing to me that late in the game that this law was passed. But of course, this is California. But I also want you to talk about how this is also a matter of patients' rights. This is really important for patients' rights. Patients have the right to hear from the truth, or at least what their doctor believes is true. And this really would have muzzled doctors from telling their patients good medical advice. So this is really a patient's rights victory as well.
That's right. And that was actually another point that we raised, because the First Amendment also protects the right to receive information.
Yes.
So this was a First Amendment issue. And one of our clients, she felt very passionately about it. She had been diagnosed with a life-threatening illness a few years ago, and she saw a bunch of doctors, didn't really like what they were saying, went to another one, and he had a very different opinion, really in the minority. She followed his advice, and she's alive now because of it. If she had followed the other doctors, she likely wouldn't have been. So, and that was outside of the COVID context, but it provides an example of why, this is a patient's rights issue.
So, in a larger sense, listen, congratulations. Thank you for fighting this fight. We need organizations like yours, like the New Civil Liberties Alliance, to fight. I mean, where's the ACLU? The old Civil Liberties Alliance on something like this. They're all in favor of this totalitarian idea that doctors aren't allowed to have a private conversation with their patient about what they think is best for them. But more importantly,
I will say the ACLU has been horrible during the pandemic, but they actually did write an amicus brief in support of us in this case.
Stop being so nice.
Come on. But this speaks large. It goes well beyond COVID-19, and it goes well beyond this idea. The specifics to this case. There is an authoritarian bent here, a lean toward authoritarianism in a legislature dominated by this sort of political ideology personified by Gavin Newsom. The fact that they thought this was just fine is terrifying to me.
Yeah, it is. And they actually just passed another bill that would have favored in custody disputes. It would have favored a parent who affirms the child's gender. Now, Newsom did not sign that. He vetoed it, but the speculation is that it's because he's planning to run for president and he needs to move to the middle, not because he, otherwise wouldn't have.
Yeah. Well, and listen, thank you for, like I said, staying on top of this and all. What are there other aspects of this warped ideology with regard to the so-called misinformation that you've got on your radar right now? Because the whole idea of the government deciding what is misinformation or disinformation and stepping in and trying to silence it goes against everything the First Amendment is supposed to be about.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I do have another case called Missouri versus Biden, which it was initially brought by the Attorneys General of Louisiana and Missouri. I think the case is very important, if I can say so. But NCLA is representing private plaintiffs in this case, so individuals in this case. Dr. Jay Bhattacharya and Martin Kulldorff, who were co-authors of the Great Barrington Declaration. And the sort of crux of that case is that the government has been pressuring social media companies to silence misinformation about COVID and other topics that the government doesn't like, which is as you stated, is exactly what the First Amendment is designed to protect. So we had a victory in the Fifth Circuit, and it looks like the case is probably headed for the Supreme Court, although there's a little bit of a procedural kerfuffle, so it's a little bit slowed down. But
just on behalf of parents who've been dealing with this, you mentioned the mask mandates. Here in Northern Virginia, parents fought really hard to relieve our children from the sort of face decorations that they were forced to wear. And I think for parents, we're not doctors, and to hear that even doctors were being intimidated, we're being told toe the line, we're being told stay on message, or else. There's something so wonderful to see that the courts are still on our side, on the side of freedom. And we have some problems in the courts on some issues, but this is a great victory. And I think it really does convey an important message to parents, that they are allowed to ask questions. They are allowed to doubt the sort of, agreed upon message. So I really want to thank you for fighting this good fight.
Oh, you're very welcome.
All right. That is Jenin Younes. She's from New Civil Liberties Alliance, and congratulations on this victory, and thanks for staying on top of these things, and to heck with the ACLU.
Thank you for having me.
It's 7:15 WMAL traffic and weather every 10 minutes, first on the five. So they wrote one amicus brief,
Yeah, whatever.
Please.
WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
Live.
From the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios.
Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
Later this morning on the Chris Plant Show, will all the Democrats in Congress pull a fire alarm in a show of solidarity with Jamaal Bowman? 9 a.m. on WMAL.
Well, falsely pulling a fire alarm is the least of the criminal worries that we in the District of Columbia have to be concerned about. It was really brought home last night, as Representative Henry Cuellar, a Democrat of Texas, was carjacked near the Navy Yard area. We've talked about this region in particular in southeast D.C., near the stadium, and
Nats
then
Park,
from Nats Park over toward the Anacostia River. It is a hotbed for carjacking. The police know this. We've seen it so often. That one tragic murder that happened when the two girls carjacked a Uber driver's car, and he refused to give away the car, and it ended up crashing, and he died. And they got a slap on the wrist, of course.
Of course.
Carjacking, by the way, was part of the new D.C. crime bill. They were reducing the penalties for carjacking in the District of Columbia at a time when carjackings have more than doubled. That, of course, was revoked by Congress. They used their oversight powers to get rid of that failed attempt to be softer on crime, if that's even possible. Representative Henry Cuellar was carjacked in that Navy Yard area last night. His vehicle was stolen, as well as his luggage, according to the congressman's aides. He is safe. At least one of the carjackers had a gun.
Yeah, this is only about a mile from the Capitol.
Mm-hmm.
But what's also interesting is about that particular area where he was carjacked is it's really easy to get on 695. There's a major intersect entrance only about 2 blocks from where he was carjacked, and we see this a lot in Crystal City or anywhere actually over on Duke Street. You can get on 495 really quickly, and in Crystal City you can get on 395. The point is that you can tell where they're carjacking because they can disappear essentially onto the interstate and escape very quickly. And so these are dangerous areas, and both Washington and D.C. and Maryland has these areas. So this whole region is it's nerve-wracking to be in those areas, particularly late at night.
This, of course, comes months after Representative Angie Craig, Democrat of Minnesota, was assaulted in the elevator of her building. That was the day she was headed to Congress to vote on that D.C. crime bill. She and over 30 other Democrats joined her in the House to overrule the D.C. crime bill. Biden said that he would veto it, but by the time it got to the Senate, and the Senate, almost on a unanimous vote, decided to overrule the crime bill, then Biden ended up signing that into law. We had Phil Mendelson, the chairman of the district council.
Phil Mendelson of the There's No Crime Problem in D.C. fame.
He was on this program, and he said, no, the real problem is Republicans.
Right.
The problem in D.C. with the crime is Republicans. This, by the way, also after a staffer from Senator Rand Paul was brutally stabbed in the D.C. area, again, just blocks from the Capitol.
Yeah.
Senator Mike Lee of Utah yesterday tweeted out, "Time to invoke Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. What is that? That is the Enclave Clause. It gives Congress the power to exercise exclusive legislation over the District of Columbia. It has been set aside in favor of so-called home rule. I think the District of Columbia government has demonstrated over the years, and certainly intensified over the last couple of years, that they have lost control of the district. Home rule is an experiment that has failed."
Yeah, I want to be real. I think this is an important thing to say. Don Beyer, who represents Alexandria and I believe also parts of Alexandria, and other Democrats who represent sort of the outskirts of the D.C. area where we're seeing a lot of these carjackings, all in for statehood. Oh, yeah. All in.
Oh, of course. In fact, if you're against statehood, you're called a racist.
Right, of course, yeah.
Because of a predominant black population.
When Don Beyer
DC.
isn't trying to steal your gas stove, he's trying to make D.C. a state, and it is a failed city.
Yeah. It can't even function as a city.
Right.
There's no way it should be a state. Let's understand this perfectly. The District of Columbia and Mayor Muriel Bowser and Delegate Eleanor Holmes Norton have spent all of their time focused on DC statehood.
Yeah.
On getting statehood. And the one sunny side of all of this, after their atrocious embrace of Black Lives Matter during the Trump administration that saw a riot and fires in an attempt to break down the gates outside the White House.
Kind of insurrection-y.
And the response was to paint a mural celebrating the movement on the sidewalk, calls to defund the police, call to reorient the police. The police, of course, have seen recruitment numbers crater in the District of Columbia. Crime is spiking and continues to spike, but Mr. Mendelsohn continues to claim that there's no problem here. The one sunny side of all of this is that the American people have even less tolerance for the idea of D.C. statehood. It will never happen, ever. It's 7:23. Coming up, we are going to give you an update on the curious case of Congressman Jamaal Bowman, who now not only likes to break the law and pull fire alarms and then lie about it, but thinks that anyone who criticizes him is a Nazi. Next.
WMAL-FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station.
Making sense of the news.
News Talk 105.9.
New now.
On News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
O'Connor and Company.
It is 7:37 here on O'Connor and Company. Thanks for tuning in and joining us this Tuesday morning in your nation's capital. Now, coming up at 8:05, we've got an interview with the book reporter from the Washington Post who is very concerned about book banning. It's banned book week in D.C. this week, and we're looking forward to engaging with him on the definition of banned. He is the book reporter, after all, so he should understand what words mean. Mm-hmm. Actual definition of words. You would think that would go along with the territory.
Yeah, you'd think.
Do you think everyone across our listening audience can hear all the noise that's going on with our construction? Because it's worse than it's ever been. We're working on our studios, so everybody should just understand if you're hearing any noise, it's not coming from your carburetor.
We're fine. Everything's fine.
All right, so let's give you an update now on Congressman Jamaal Bowman. Now, Jamaal Bowman, of course, as you know, doesn't understand how to work a door or read a sign. So he is the perfect representative for his district in the Empire State of New York. He, of course, pulled a fire alarm on Saturday. He claimed that he was confused. Here's how bad it is. The best excuse he can give now, the one that can save his butt, the one that can keep him from being arrested, detained, convicted, and expelled, is to tell the world that he is an illiterate moron. He's got to stick with that. He's got to. If he veers away from that defense, then he's out of here, baby.
Yeah,
so he's just got to double down. No. Really, I'm stupid.
Right.
That's the only explanation that we can work with. So he was asked yesterday by an intrepid reporter if he had any further comment about his malicious fire alarm prank.
Do you still stand by your statement that the fire alarm was an accident?
You know, I don't know why this has gotten so much attention. I was literally just in a rush to go vote, man. That's all it was.
Mm-hmm. Are you afraid of any repercussions, either from leadership or from legally from Capitol Police?
I mean, listen, I take responsibility for what I did, but like I said, I was in a rush to go vote, and, investigation will sort everything else out.
Have you talked to Jeffries about it?
Oh, yeah, of course. That's day one, yes.
How was that conversation?
Well, I got to keep that between me and the leader, so I'm not going to share that publicly here, but we've been in touch with each other.
Full transparency. Mr. Jeffries, of course, is Representative Hakeem Jeffries. He's the minority leader who, by the way, just people are forgetting this. He had a press briefing about half an hour before the fire alarm incident where he told reporters that his caucus needed a little bit more time before the vote.
Yes.
People are forgetting that.
Yes.
That he's, we really need more time here. We're not having a chance to sort of regroup.
I mean, we're not saying he deployed the dumbest member of Congress to go and pull on a fire alarm.
No, not at all.
You know what I really want, Larry? I really want someone to interview Hank Johnson. This is the congressman who said Guam was going to capsize. Right. I want to see how he feels about being replaced as the dimmest member of Congress.
Yes, Hank Johnson was seen doing a victory lap around the Capitol, running up the steps and jumping up and down like Rocky Balboa, saying, yes!
Is there any video of Hank Johnson saying, pull it, pull it?
Yeah, do it, man. You can get away with it.
Do it. Yeah.
John Levine from the New York Post reminds us of an article he wrote about the aforementioned Congressman Bowman in 2021, where he promised he wouldn't take a salary out of his campaign accounts, and then shockingly, he did just that.
Kidding.
Yeah, no problem there. Then it turns out that the congressman's staff put out a bunch of talking points.
Right.
for other
Send
Democrats
it out to the
to be able
Democrat
to-
delegation.
I
or
guess
to
it's a courteous thing, right? We know you're going to be asked about this, so
and
let
we
us,
know it's going to be tough to answer.
right.
because-
So let me give you some things you can say. And apparently one of the talking points was to just say, you know what, Republicans need to worry about the Nazis within their ranks.
If all else fails, mention the Nazis.
Then about an hour later, after this was publicized, Congressman Bowman took to social media and said, I just became aware that in our messaging guidance, there was inappropriate use of the term Nazi. What's the appropriate use of the term Nazi when talking about your colleagues? I condemn the use of the term Nazi outside of its precise definition. Well, that's nice. I appreciate that. Sadly, though, somebody dug up a tweet that he put out just about 6 months ago calling conservative columnist and podcaster Michael Knowles a Nazi.
Right.
So I guess that's the proper context of the use of the word
I
Nazi.
personally find it encouraging that he is now looking at the precise definition of words like emergency and fire. Look those up.
And Congresswoman Nancy Mace, after all of this transpired, no, I was just trying to get to a vote, and so I ripped the signs down and pulled a fire alarm thinking it would open a door, and the signs that I pulled down specifically said push on the door, not pull an alarm.
Only in an emergency.
And then he claimed that, his office said everyone's a Nazi for criticizing him, and then he said you shouldn't use the word Nazi, even though in the past he just used the word Nazi. Congresswoman Nancy Mace took to Twitter and said, as a mom, it's terrifying to think that this guy was ever a school principal. No wonder our public schools are failing at the very least.
And just a reminder, as a principal, he was required to do 12. Jen Gentles over at IWF said yesterday they are required to do 12 fire drills a year. Yeah. So he knows what happens when he pulls a fire alarm.
Of course he does. All right. There's a little bit more, though, as this story develops that really does need to be scrutinized because this, of course, plays into the fact that there are two tiers of justice in this country where any other congressman without a D after their name would really be facing severe penalties right now. And it looks like this guy is going to get off scot-free.
Yeah.
Or is he? We're going to get into that in just a moment.
We do not have one rule for Republicans and another rule for Democrats. We don't have one rule for foes and another for friends. We don't have one rule for the powerful and another for the powerless.
That's Attorney General Merrick Garland on 60 Minutes Sunday, lying to the American people. I know it's a lie because Jamaal Bowman, congressman from New York, still walks the streets as a free man. And Merrick Garland, if he was true to his word, and he really wanted to demonstrate to the world, I mean, it wouldn't really demonstrate it, but at least it would be a token demonstration that there aren't separate rules for Republicans and Democrats. He should arrest this man. The man should this happened on federal grounds. By the way, where's the Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy?
Where?
I mean, why doesn't he have the Sergeant of Arms?
He's busy.
Take him in. Well, McCarthy was asked about it.
I was really appalled of watching Democrats' actions today to delay it to get to a shutdown. But when we found that an individual elected to Congress would pull a fire alarm, that's a new low.
Don't be appalled. Do something. You're the Speaker of the freaking House. The Sergeant of Arms operates at your command.
Yes.
Take him into custody. I'm being 100% serious here. Did he break the law?
Yes.
Does he have an excuse?
Did he admit it?
Yeah, and he admitted it. Now, does he have some sort of excuse? Maybe, but let a jury decide that. Not, okay, well, he has an excuse, so it's okay to break the law. No. It's this kind of lawlessness that leads to a carjacking of a congressman.
Well,
in the
this kind
streets
of
DC.
lawlessness was treated pretty harshly by the January 6th committee. So what's with the lower standards here?
No, this is ridiculous. And by the way, there's a reason why there are laws against pulling a fire alarm. You always hear Democrats when we talk about, freedom of speech and the right to actually express your opinion and say things that you want on social media without repercussions. And they always falsely say, well, it's not like you can scream fire in a movie theater. Well, first of all, actually, you can fire in a movie theater. But the ethic behind the screaming fire in a movie theater is that you falsely create panic. We live in a 9/11 world and a post-January 6th world in Congress, where we've heard the torment that Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez had to suffer that day in the bathroom of her office, as
believing she was going to be murdered
and sexually assaulted by apparently police officers. Actually,
right.
If I remember her story right, it was a Capitol policeman that terrified her.
Right.
Make of that what you will. When you pull a fire alarm, you incite panic.
You do.
That's what he did here.
Yeah.
And this cavalier sort of attitude taken by him in particular here with the whole...
That's all it was.
Are you afraid of any repercussions?
Oh, sorry, this part of it.
You know, I don't know why this has gotten so much attention.
I don't know why.
Jeez, come on. I'm just
a fire alarm that required the evacuation of the entire building. I also want to say that there's the other kind of excuse I'm seeing online is, well, I mean, it wasn't even the Capitol building. And you mentioned the other day that there are tunnels underneath.
Yep.
Okay. So it often will require evacuation of the Capitol portion of the Capitol that is connected via tunnel. So, I mean, this idea that like it was just a little like fire alarm and nothing happened. It delayed the vote. It caused also, where's the sympathy for the Capitol Police?
Mm-hmm.
These are the same people who, you know, the Democrats are like, you know, every minute, you know, they have to mention the insurrection, January 6th, and the effect it had on Capitol Police. And suddenly they don't care that you caused the evacuation of an entire building managed mostly by the Capitol Police. Where's the sympathy for them? That was a hassle.
Well, Speaker McCarthy is very sympathetic here.
I was really appalled.
There, what more do you want? The man's appalled. Don't you see? Don't you know what that means? Also, where's the video? We've got the still shot. The still shot. I want to see the video.
Cameras are everywhere.
I want to see him. Yeah, just ask Congressman Boebert. I want the video of him walking to the door, staring at the sign, scratching his head like he's confused and doesn't understand the English language.
Drooling.
And then I want to see him ripping the signs off the door and hanging onto them as he pulls the alarm. Because
interesting
it
how
appears that's what
interesting
happened.
How these videos don't exist.
Don't get released.
Right?
No, they exist. We know they exist. This Class A felony. By the way, I had mentioned yesterday in the air that it was a misdemeanor. It's not. It's a felony. D.C. law, corruptly or by threats of force, any way obstructs or impedes or endeavors to obstruct or impede the due administration of justice in any official proceeding. It's a Class A felony. It carries at least 3 years, no more than 30 years. So, you know, you got that. And a fine at minimum of $12,500. Now, that's the federal code specific to obstruction of a congressional proceeding, which is exactly the result of his deliberate negligent actions.
Yeah, but I don't know what the big deal is.
Yeah,
says Bowman.
Yeah, why is everyone making such a big deal?
I don't know why
out of
everyone's
this?
making such a big deal.
You know, I don't know why this has gotten so much attention.
There you go. Well, again, at least our speaker is on the case.
I was really appalled.
Meanwhile, Peter Doocy did ask Karine Jean-Pierre a very pertinent question about this.
Would President Biden ever try to get out of a meeting by pulling a fire alarm?
Are you talking about something specifically?
A Democratic member of Congress pulled a fire alarm around a series of votes. No fire. Is that appropriate?
What I can tell you is I've not spoken to the president about this. And so just not going to comment. I would leave it up to, I know there's a House.
So you have to talk to the president to find out exactly how he feels.
I also love this sort of, you can tell she's laughing. It's also funny.
Yeah, it's hilarious. It's 7:53.